The great Sufi master Ibn Arabi, known as the Shaykh al-Akbar, because he is considered one of the greatest of all the sheikhs of all times in the Islamic spiritual tradition, he developed a concept that afterwards was understood or conceptualized as Waḥdat al-Wujūd, meaning the unity of being or the oneness of existence. Even though this is not really a concept that he developed directly, his ontology can be very well explained using this concept, which intends to integrate two seemingly opposite ontological views, which are transcendence and immanence. This points to the idea of the relationship between essence and manifestation, between al-Ḥaqq, which is the word that in Arabic is used to convey truth, reality, and al-Khalq, which is the creation, the manifestation, the cosmos. This pair of concepts, al-Haqq on the one hand and al-Khalq on the other, are also related to the inward and the outward, al-Batin and al-Zahir, which are aspects of the way in which God manifests itself and hides itself from creation. So there's always this dynamic tension in which we have an indirect access to God through its manifestation, but at the same time, it is God Himself who is knowing Himself through creation, expressing Himself through it. So al-Haqq is the inner reality of manifestation, and manifestation is the outward expression of this inner reality. This is directly related to the problem of the relationship between the one and the many. How can we conceive and understand that if everything is the unfolding, if everything is the self-manifestation of this oneness, then how is it possible? How come that we have such a different levels of intensity of reality, of consciousness, even the problem of theodicy, which is the problem of evil? And here comes a very interesting aspect in Ibn Arabi's thought, which is to depict this multiplicity as progressively hierarchical levels of degrading reality, as if there were levels of multiplicity which are farther and farther away from this oneness, in a way that they convey less consciousness, less clarity, and to a certain extent, less degrees of existence. So the one and the many are related in such a way that it is the one who is deploying or who is unfolding its essence in these progressively degraded layers of existence, in a way that we may grasp or we may perceive layers of reality, ontological layers. So now comes the question, how is it possible that out of this essence, this unity, multiplicity appears? And I would say that here is a very brilliant answer, which is to say that as long as the one is infinite, then it contains within itself all the infinite possibilities. So as a latent, as something that is hidden as a possibility not yet manifested, there are some names and attributes in divine consciousness, not as something existing, but as a possibility to be manifested. And it is out of these names and attributes, out of these possibilities, within the infinitude of the consciousness of God, that every blueprint of everything that then we can perceive in the world at the spiritual or the material level will appear. So these names of God and these attributes are as latent possibilities of manifestation that will manifest themselves when God says kun in Arabic, be. So in this metaphysical narrative, it is these possibilities latent as infinite possibilities within the one, which when they are activated by the intention of God. And there, of course, lies a question: where does this intention come from? Or how can we conceive that as something that has an intention if it is just one? But then the answer comes because it is contained within the infinite possibilities of the one. So it's very interesting as a brilliant argument to posit the way in which or how this oneness expresses itself, manifests itself in multiplicity. And these names and attributes would be the blueprints out of which everything in the cosmos, at the level of spiritual, at the level of the spiritual, at the level of the psychic, or at the level of the physical realms will appear. Underlying all this is the idea of the gradational nature of being, in which we may distinguish the essence. Within the essence, these names and attributes, which are not existent in itself, but are possibilities to become existent. Then we have this subtle realm, which is the realm of the spiritual, the intelligible. And then we have the psychic level, which is the realm of imagination, which plays a very important role in Ibn Arabi's conception of hierarchical reality or manifestation. And then at last, we have the physical or material sensible level. Reality as this gradual manifestation then exhibits different levels of intensity of existence, of consciousness. Directly related to this hierarchical conception of reality is the concept of mundos imaginalis. This concept by Ibn Arabi involves the existence of a realm in which the spiritual may manifest as if it were sensible to the material, and the material may, to a certain extent, acquire some spiritual aspects. We have to think that in this hierarchy from essence to the mineral world, we may distinguish between levels of existence in which the spiritual is very subtle and intelligible, and the psychic is a realm which is kind of in between the subtle spiritual aspects and the material one. So within this psychic world, this mundos imaginalis, there seems to lie what Ibn Arabi considers to be a barzakh, that is to say an isthmus, and in between a layer of existence, an ontological layer where revelation, where visions are manifested. It is also the realm of the real creativity. Multiplicity, then, is not something that compromises the unity of the one. Quite the contrary, it seems to be a very beautiful way in which the one expresses itself through its multiple possibilities in the realm of the spiritual, the psychic, or the material. These names and attributes, conceived as these possibilities within the unity, within the infinite consciousness that we call God, are manifested in the cosmos, distributed among everything that we may perceive, in such a way that everything that we perceive, every aspect of nature, of physics, is nothing but the manifestation of the interaction of these attributes, of these latent possibilities within the consciousness of God, so to speak. The doctrine of unity of Ibn Arabi may be understood as some form of sophisticated ontological monism. That is to say, it intends to integrate the notion of oneness and multiplicity in such a way that they are not two different ontological realities, ontological levels of existence, but just two ways of approaching exactly the same, which is, on the one hand, this oneness which manifests itself in a process that may be conceived as a self-disclosure or self-manifestation in multiple layers, which are at the same time himself or itself. These same divine attributes, which are manifested as a cosmos in this plurality outwards, is also contained within the heart of every human being. As long as the heart of a human being is polished, is purified, it will be able to reflect these divine attributes, all of them. So, the concept of the perfect human being, al-Insan al-Kamil, in Ibn Arabi, is another very important concept which depicts, represents the human being also as a sort of barzakh, as an intermediate layer between God and its manifestation. So a real human being is the one who is able to manifest all his divine names, and this is achieved through self-annihilation. Through self-annihilation, meaning through the annihilation of his own ego in such a way that there is not anymore an agent, a human being as an agent with some intention, but just the mirror reflecting these attributes. And the perfect human being, al-Insan al-Kamil, which is our goal to achieve that according to Ibn Arabi, is another way of saying annihilating our idea as self-existent beings and realizing a real nature, which is just a reflection, a khalifa, a vice-regent, a representative of God in earth through which God knows himself. To me, this doctrine of unity posited by Ibn Arabi is so beautiful and so elegant because it affirms everything. It says that everything is real to a certain extent. The cosmos is real, but it's real as long as it is understood as the manifestation of the essence of God. And at the same time, it allows us to not only balance, but to understand that these two, the transcendent and the immanent, are not two layers of existence in itself, but two modalities in which reality deploys or manifests its real essence. And we will see that there is a very interesting difference between this way of understanding non-duality in the Sufi tradition led by Ibn Arabi and the conception of non-duality contained in Advaita Vedanta as it is understood by Shankaracharya. We will talk about this in our next episode. I would say that the main concept that explains Ibn Arabi's ontology is some sort of ontological monism, but a sophisticated one in which both the transcendent and the immanent are two aspects, two modes of being of the same oneness. In this sense, Ibn Arabi manifests or posits that all the manifestation, the cosmos, what we call reality, is not but the unfolding of this oneness itself. So It is not ultimately real, but it is not at the same time unreal, because it exists as a manifestation of this oneness, but it is not self-sufficient. It's not existent in itself, which is the case of the one, of God, which would be the self-sustained, the necessary being. The sources out of which Ibn Arabi developed all this doctrine of unity, I would dare to say that are three: the Quran, the Hadith, and the revelations that he said he received directly from the Prophet Muhammad. So it is a philosophy that also has some soteriological function. It means that it is pretended not only to give a sophisticated explanation that may integrate the apparent conflict between immanence and transcendence, but also to show a path towards liberation. Let's delve into the etymology of these words, Waḥdat and Wujūd. Waḥdat is a word that means directly oneness or unity. It has the same root than the word Tawheed, which is the concept that probably summarizes the essence of Islam, which is the sole reality of God, God as the one. And it is directly related with what we could call an apophatic theology, a conception of God in which God cannot be described because it is not something, so one cannot posit anything about it, because in this sense, God is something that is ineffable, something that we cannot conceptualize or grasp. This is the negative approach to this conceptualization of what we mean by God, Brahman, Allah. It doesn't matter which is the name that we choose. I think that we are, from an apophatic point of view, pointing to this same reality that transcends anything that we may conceive. And this is related to the word wahad. The concept of wujud is a little bit more complex because it is related to existence. But existence conceived in a way in which it's only partially or relatively real, because its reality only takes place within oneness as a manifestation of this oneness. So wujud is related to the contingent, to anything that happens to be, happens to occur, but not to the necessary being, which is the case of wahad. So unity of being involves an interplay in which this oneness, this ineffable reality, which transcends, which is the absolute other, manifests itself, displays or unfolds itself in different layers of existence, which is what we call wujud. So existence in Ibn Arabi's doctrine is something that is existing only or insofar it belongs or is a manifestation of God, of oneness. So Waḥdat al-Wujūd involves a tension in which what appears to exist exists in the mind of God, but God is self-sufficient. Self-sufficient in the sense that it's the necessary being, while what exists, wujud, is something that exists only as long as it exists in the mind of God. One may even say that existence or everything existing to a certain extent borrows its existence from Wahad, from God, from the One. So it's not really existing in itself, but exists only as far as it is this manifestation depicting or unfolding the only real reality, which is God, Tawheed, the One. Ibn Arabi is then positing that the real Gnostic, the Arif, is the one who is able to affirm simultaneously the apophatic and the cataphatic, the negative and the positive view or conception of God. That is to say, the one who is able to see in the immanent, in existence, in every element, aspect, or activity in the universe, the essence of God, because transcendence involves something that goes beyond our capacity to comprehend, but at the same time, it can be grasped indirectly through its manifestation as existence. So the universe appears as a veil through which we may perceive or partially comprehend what goes beyond it, which is the one. So the real mystic, according to Ibn Arabi, is the one who is seeing God in everything immanent in the world. The world appears as the channel, the vessel of the transcendent. There is a way in which, within the Arabic tradition and specifically within Ibn Arabi's Doctrine, is depicted the relationship between the world and God is through the expression huwa la huwa. It means he, not he, involving that the word is he in the sense that it is the unfolding, the self-disclosure, self-manifestation of his essence. But at the same, it's not he because it is not in itself. It is contingent and dependent on the essence of the necessary being, which is God. In this sense, the word is he because it depicts, it announces God, but it is not he because it exists only as far as God gives it its existence.